I think we can safely say that today video games have become an integral part of society. If you try to think 10 to 15 years back maybe, it might have been only a hobby for those selected few, but especially with the introduction of smartphones and tablets, and partially the modern generation of handhelds, gaming has become widely accessible. Hell, even my parents are now playing video games. Well, they just play solitaire on their tablets over and over again, like rats hooked on cocaine, but at least they stopped telling me that I'm 30 years old and I should not be playing video games anymore. But despite all that, what is drawing in a lot of players today is the PvP genre, where you try to test your skill versus someone else. But depending on what game you choose, you might end up being yelled at by some kid about how he will do really naughty things with your mom, or you might actually have a pleasant experience. So since I'm from Europe, a continent which for some reason has nothing but war and conflict in its past and present, over the centuries people here have been doing nothing but developing ways to kill your neighbor because he has something that you need, and the neighbor has been developing ways to protect himself because you are trying to steal his shit. On this episode of Games Compared, we will be taking a look at a very special, near and dear type of games to my heart, the good old medieval hack and slash Chivalry II vs Mordhau. Now, just to be fair here, I know it has been a long time since I did the last comparison series, but to be fair, the initial plan of comparing Chivalry, which came out all the way back in 2012 and has barely any player base left, versus Mordhau, which came out in 2019, would be completely unfair. And so, like an idiot, I waited for Steam to be kind enough to get the sequel, because I'm just not a fan of having my video games on Epic Store, Ubisoft Connect, GOG Galaxy, Origin, and other 10,000 platforms. As I am kind of sure I could have done another comparison series in the meantime, but being a stubborn idiot, I wanted to do a PvP comparison instead of another RTS or FPS games compared, so here we finally are. And so if you enjoy stories about chivalry knights, oh wow, about long campaigns, hey, about epic battles, oh come on, about god damn it, I'm trying to make an intro here, stop killing me, about, oh god damn it, you know, screw it, let's just roll the intro. Not your professional walkthroughs channel presents. So I do realize that this may not be a cup of tea for everyone when it comes to PvP time gameplay, as it's primarily MOBAs and Battle Royale that dominates the genre. But living in a country where every city and hill between cities has a castle or a castle ruin, this was a no-brainer for me, and so when I was younger, I was fascinated with medieval knights and the weaponry that they use. And boy, do I gotta tell you, you will certainly enjoy turning someone's head into mush if you got the skills and patience to learn how the game works. As let's just say, things can get quite messy. And so as per usual, in order to make this properly, I will be going over quite a few things here to tell you why these games are awesome, and if I will be able to determine if either one is the superior title. So let's start off with the engine. We're going to be leveling up the playing field for both titles, as even despite some differences in their years of being released, they both are running on the stunning Unreal Engine 4. This means that your eyes will be pleased every time you decapitate some poor guy in full body of armor, or you turn them into a human torch. Overall, the engine is really nicely set up to handle the games, but of course, we will go over what might go wrong eventually. The lights are saturated, the dark places react really nicely, however, do not expect any ray tracing. And overall, the visuals are just beautiful to look at. Therefore, here both games get a point for utilizing the engine properly to set up the scenery. Audio. Now, I usually do not focus this much on audio, and I'm not in particular talking about the soundtrack for these games. But depending on how much time you are planning on spending playing these titles, the audio really sets up the mood here and helps to pull you into the story. And I have to say that for the first time ever, we are focusing on audio, and this is the first time in the comparison series where I am going to advise you, if you pick up eventually either one of these titles, to use your headphones. This will be quite the advantage for you, especially when you want to hear someone trying to sneak up on you, as hearing those footsteps might save your life. Or you might manage to dodge the swing of the enemy attack, and this can really help you out. Both games utilize audio really well, and therefore I will be assigning point to both titles, same as with the engine. Learning the game. So both games offer tutorial, and I can only recommend that you will not skip it in either one of the two titles, as it will help you understand the basic in-game mechanics that will increase your chance of survivability. But despite that, it is really important to go over the fact of how easy it is to start playing the game, as once you hit those matches versus other players, you will have to start making decisions much faster than you anticipated, and depending on how fast you can adapt, you will either see improvement or you will keep getting killed over and over again. Therefore, learning things like faking an attack, breaking enemy defense, using throwables or consumables to get the upper hand in an engagement, or hell, even ducking while the enemy swings a massive sword around, are all sorts of useful techniques, all picked up by you at your own pace, but depending on how much you want to kill that fucker that ruined your kill streak, you will have to try to push yourself to be better. And here we will see the first major difference between the two games, as I have noticed, especially for Mordhau, that starting in this game is much more difficult for newcomers in comparison to Chivalry II. Here I have to give a point to Chivalry, as it's much easier to start playing the game and start to learn and progress in comparison to Mordhau, which is much more punishing. However, if you truly are looking for a challenge, Mordhau is the way to go, and that is because you are dealing with people who are passionate about the genre, and if they log into the game, they will try their best to get you killed, and a large portion of this is thanks to them having more experience and knowing how to fake an attack, as I cannot tell you how many times, thanks to them faking an attack in Mordhau, I got killed. And this brings us to the next stage: your class building, your armor types, your loadouts. Here we will see a massive difference for the very first time in two games, as they take individual approach towards building loadouts and classes. In Chivalry II, you are given the access to Archer, Vanguard, Footman, and Knight. Each class has a unique loadout. Logically, archers go with bows, longbows, curved bows, war bows, crossbows as their primary damage dealers. The thing to understand is that you will need to keep killing people and leveling up with these weapons in order to gain access to these different various types of armaments. Vanguard is your two-handed specialist, so think your battle axes, war clubs, greatswords, anything that you need two strong hands and a decent set of armor, this is your class. Footman is your infantry with high mobility and lighter armor or weapons compared to the Vanguard class. You can still wield halberds, spears, and other weaponry, but they are lighter and they allow you to be more mobile, running circles around the last class, which is the Knight class. This is the heaviest of them all. Head to toes, there is little space that is not covered in armor. This is a great class to try and focus on, especially at the start, as the added armor might give you that extra HP to survive those never-ending attacks from the enemy. The loadout for the Knight class is heavily varied, and based on your personal preference, you'll be able to deal a lot of damage. Do you want to have a big axe? You got it. Do you want to play more passively and carry a handheld shield and a smaller weapon? You got it. Knights are unique thanks to the fact that they are a walking human tank, and same as the tank, their loadouts are quite unique, so depending on your personal preference, you'll be able to eventually create that class that is most optimal to your playstyle. Based on my observation in Chivalry II, majority of players preferred Knights and Vanguards, And the archers feel more like a novelty class, as you really need to either land a headshot or get someone who has received plenty of punishment before to get that kill. And so you will try to focus primarily on the melee classes, which will give you a slight jump in the experience and gaining options with the various loadouts, and you will be therefore able to find out what truly works and does not work for you. Because Mordhau works on a different principle, and there is this implementation of in-game currency which we have not yet addressed, when you get the game, you are given 9 predetermined classes, so think archers, think knights, and many others. The problem here is that majority of these classes are absolute trash. Each class comes with a specific type of loadout and a role in the team that it should be performing. On top of it, the game introduces unique perks, which is not something that you will find in Chivalry II. So this can affect your character, as it can turn them to be fire resistant, they can be a tall tank, they can be a short midget, they can do plenty of things with the perks. Problem here is that when you start to take these default classes into the matches, you will not see them because most of them are totally bad. And therefore you will have to start learning how to counter unique classes created by the other players, which can be quite problematic. Mordhau gives you the unique freedom of creating your own medieval killing machine, which can also help with the role-playing aspect. And so when you go into the mercenary creation menu, the empty canvas that is in front of you will soon start to take shape that represents you. But that shape is limited to 48 points to be allocated to armor, weaponry, consumables, and perks, meaning your imagination is the limit depending on what you can accommodate. Thanks to this, you will see plenty of interesting classes around. Units like Normans who fought along William the Conqueror, and being honest, Mordhau really gets the point here, as they are not restricting you, and I even saw people being able to create classes like Santa Claus or Ezio Auditore from the Assassin's Creed. And if the loadout does not work for you, well, you can go back into the customization menu and tweak what is not working for you and make it work. If you can still not fix it, you can just delete that class and start brand new. Mordhau has reworked their class customization menu recently, and so it's now much easier to navigate each body part, and you will be able to go really crazy here. I'm just slightly confused regarding to a couple of things, as previously you were able to build hybrid classes where your primary weapon was a handheld battle axe and your secondary was a crossbow or a longbow. I don't see that option as of now, but it might be due to the fact that I'm not as much of a high level, so I might be locked out of these options. If you are currently locked out of these options after the update has gone out and you already are a proud owner of Mordhau, if you have created these classes previously, they will still remain in your class selection, and so you will not be losing them. And this is where the true challenge in Mordhau lies, because you are going to be going against all these individually created classes with millions of variations to loadouts, and here you can really struggle dodging, parrying, or taking in consideration what the consumables of the enemy might be. You really have to time your parries quite adequately, as one tiny mistake can end in you getting killed. Also, when I started to play Mordhau, I found myself playing the archer class quite frequently because it did not feel as a novelty. The arrows actually dealt a crap ton of damage, and it made the class feel actually valuable in the team plays. On top of it, going against certain weapons for which you would have to spend hours and maybe even weeks grinding for, and having only a starting class that can go against it might be really not the best experience for newcomers, as trying to deal damage with some basic weapon against some really experienced player who has really professional loadout selected, that can be quite challenging as well, and it can deter the newcomers from staying in the game for a longer period of time. So my suggestion when it comes to class creation is to not really look up that many loadouts on YouTube, but try to work with the classes that were given to you at the start and try to find out which works the best for you. And when you start to create your own class, try to play around that loadout, just tweak few things which were problematic for you, and that might get you started properly. When it comes to the consumables, both games take also a unique approach to keep the game balanced. In Chivalry II, you are given specialized consumables like medkits for your teammates, banners, trumpets, and the flaming grenades, and these are on a cooldown which you will have to keep playing through in order to actually utilize them. This prevents players from spamming the same item over and over again, making the game completely broken or unbalanced. But what Chivalry kind of screwed up is how easy it is to resupply your normal consumables, like bandages or throwing knives. As if you approach a chest and some major battle is happening near you, you can turn yourself into a stationary turret, throwing these consumables, being only vulnerable when you have to restock on the ammunition. The biggest sin of Chivalry II also comes with the fact that you are capable of throwing your weapons as deadly projectiles. And since we are talking about loadouts, you remember how I mentioned that you are able to carry a shield. Well, imagine that the enemy is charging at you and you carry an axe and a shield. Logic dictates that you will throw the axe, however in Chivalry, you will actually throw the shield first at the enemy. I don't know, maybe it's to confuse them, but I have to say that this is the dumbest thing, and please, for the love of God, Torn Banner, fix this shit. Mordhau does this differently, as you have access to chests, but you cannot access them over and over again. Meaning, if you need to pick up your special throwable, which is on a cooldown as well, like the flaming grenade or the medical bandage, after you use them, you have to wait for a certain amount of time before you are able to resupply your unit, so if you screw up in the meantime, you're going to die. One more thing which should be mentioned is to understand when certain classes have the upper hand. If you use long weapons in short or tight corners, you're gonna get overrun. If you use short weapons in large open spaces, you're gonna get killed because the enemy has different reach and they can deal more damage to you this way. Obviously, I cannot go over everything in these two games when it comes to the loadout itself, because this way we would spend at least 10 hours in the video and nobody really wants to hear me talk for this long. So here I have to assign the point to Mordhau for both the consumables and both the loadout, as sure, it might be much more difficult to go against millions of variations, but you have to keep in mind that the enemy has the same issue and they have to face millions of variations of other players as well. Leveling up. So a big selling point of the PvP games is that you jump in, have some fun, kill something or someone, and you get out because you have other things to do. If you want to see your skills be improved but primarily have options to create different loadouts or have more in-game currency, you will have to dedicate a specific amount of time to both of the games as they work on the same principle. Each match can be various scenario, from besieging of an enemy castle to killing each other in an arena, but in order for you to actually gain the experience and gain the money for the match, you need to stay until it's over. This means that if you will not allocate 20 to 40 minutes per match, depending on what game mode you will be picking up, as either a defender or attacker or the team match or whatever session you decide to jump into, whatever score you will be obtaining during the duration of the match will be lost if you exit before it's officially over. This also creates a problem because when you jump into a match, you are not guaranteed that you will be going to one that is just about to start. No. You can be joining a match which is 5 minutes from being over, or is in the halfway point. This means that you have only limited time to get as many kills or assists or focus on the objective, but in the end you can still earn less gold or experience because you had less time, which might also pressure you into doing more dumb mistakes where you will be feeding the enemy team with kills, and therefore this can also negatively impact your overall outcome or the outcome for your team. There are no winners or losers in this department because both games offer the same exact reward system for fulfilling matches. And sure, if you want to have better chance of potentially picking up a match which might suit you, in both games you can access the server list and try to find out the match or the server which would be more suitable for you, or if you remember that specific server was really good with the quality of the players or the experience or the ping, you will be able to keep trying to log into that server and see if you can relive those previous experiences in those previous matches. And speaking of matches, let us tackle the possible game modes you can enjoy in these two titles. Everyone is looking for a different experience when they log into the games, as doing over and over again the same thing and expecting a different outcome, well, you know how the saying goes. So in order to not make the players feel bored as hell, the game throws in a mix of different types of experiences to keep the players engaged. In Chivalry II, the primary focus and maps that you will see are focused around, number 1, team objectives, where both teams have either the offensive or defensive position. Therefore, because a lot of these maps like Slaughter of Coxwell, Fall of Lionspire feel like you are doing the same thing, each map tries to give you a different objective along the way to not feel repetitive as hell. In one, you have to start with killing the peasants that are located in a wheat field outside of city fortification. In another, you have to destroy some monuments. Either you have to push a siege equipment through heavily defended city, or you have to get into the city port and destroy docked ships. They really did give you a nice set of options, but when you play all these maps, you will know pretty much when you should focus on which class and which loadout, as it will have a major impact on the overall progression on either the enemy team or your team. Just keep in mind, the variations are more focused around the offensive team and doing different objectives along the way, as when you are defending, all you are doing is defending. Then we have number 2, which is free-for-all. This one can be truly the distraction or stress release you might need, as all you do is keep swinging your sword until anything that moves in your surrounding is dead or at least is missing a limb or two. Here is where that audio and wearing headphones might come especially handy, as you never know where the next strike might come from. Number 3 is Team Deathmatch. So this one is pretty straightforward. You and your teammates are trying to outperform the others by getting the higher body count, and this can be a great place for you to master those skills like dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge. Wait, that's for a movie. Well, it works here, so screw it. Mordhau introduces different game modes, such as Brawl. So Brawl consists of basic deathmatch, team deathmatch, and skirmish modes where you and 15 other players go crazy, killing each other, trying to outperform the other ones, or just kill anything that moves. It really depends on your personal preference if you want to kill anything that is around you, or if you want to learn how to work together to take down a difficult opponent. The second one is Frontline or Invasion. These two game modes consist of large maps that can be referred to as a tug of war, where both sides are trying to reach certain objective. These are also the modes which allow for most players to join, so we're talking 48 till 64. Chivalry II does the same thing. When it's either besieging castle, or it's to get catapulted into certain position, or it's to defend some royal, it's the same thing, they just switch it around so you do not feel like you're doing the same thing over and over again. However, what you will notice, especially when new matches are selected, that certain maps are highly preferred, so you might end up playing certain maps over and over again, while certain maps are not touched at all. Horde Mode. Horde Mode is truly unique to Mordhau, as you will be cooperating with other players trying to survive the never-ending waves of enemy AI that is gonna be getting consistently more and more deadly. Now, this might seem like a super weird feature, because why in the hell would you want to play against AI when you can play against enemy players? Yeah, I know it sounds kind of boring, but if you try to go into the Horde Mode thinking that you will be dominating, you are sorely mistaken. This is a truly unique experience, and if you ever pick up this game, I highly recommend it. The overall verdict for these two games, to be more exact, is that both games offer basically the same thing with few differences. Strangely, there is no capture the flag or steal the enemy flag, and instead both studios have decided to incorporate this feature somehow differently by holding a town square or something similar. Despite all that, I have to say that in both games I have found a big problem, especially with the team objectives or the frontline or invasion game modes, especially because certain maps have the unfortunate setting where you really are incapable of defeating the offensive team as the defenders, and I'm gonna try to explain this. Let's say you start the game and the enemy is trying to push a battering ram or some ram towards your fortification. All the enemy needs to do is group up by the siege device and wait until they reach the walls. The defenders really lack the possibility to destroy, damage, or block the passage for these siege weapons, therefore the offensive team has only one more weapon which they can rely on, and if they lose even that one, it's game over. This means that eventually the battering rams will reach the fortifications, and once that happens, the game moves to a different stage. And because of this, you will see that majority of the players just prefer to switch teams as the attackers, as the defenders really lack this sort of possibility to prevent the team to reach the next stage of the match. Meaning, a lot of times people just refuse to play as the defenders, and this can create certain issues during the match. Great example for this can be the Lion Spire map. At the start of the battle, you battle it out on the beach, but eventually the attackers are deploying two battering rams, and you cannot do anything to destroy them, so eventually the enemy will be breaching through the gates to get inside of the city. It's only at the very end where there is this narrow bridge which turns into the biggest meat grinder of the medieval era, where if you try to swing your sword or whatever weapon you are wielding, you have the unfortunate chance to hit 4 of your allies and maybe 1 enemy, but also the same thing can apply to the others, as they can hit their friendlies but also not hit you, the enemy. Both games show this lack of creativity or giving a better chance to both teams to level the playing field, and so seeing people switching teams during the matches or have more attackers than the defenders can be quite frequent. Sure, they can try to block this by allowing only a certain amount of players on each team, but depending on how many people are on that match specifically, this might still not be an effective method. And since I'm talking about the possible problems with the game modes, let us tackle the bugs and other issues that you might run into while playing these two games. So as I mentioned during the engine portion of the video, both games look absolutely amazing and they utilize the game engine really well. But the game engine simply cannot always respond properly to all the moving bits and pieces of the game, and you will experience bugs. These bugs may vary from really small things like hitting someone or standing in front of an enemy and they suddenly disappear, to potentially large bugs like you warping through the ground, falling under the map, to being into armory, trying to set up your loadout, while all of a sudden another class or unit stands up, walks into the one you have pre-selected, and suddenly you're looking at the brand new X-Man. You cannot really counter all these things, unfortunately, and they are not frequent, but I have to warn you that they are present in both games and they can occur at any time. It really depends on how many people are on the map and how many moving parts are currently occurring in certain concentrated areas. One additional thing which can really annoy you and make the game really not that fun is how good your internet connection is, as depending on your average ping, you might have either a smooth experience or you might be jumping from point to point, suddenly dying because someone attacked you and you did not even have the chance to respond. And because we are talking about PvP games, I feel like another thing should be mentioned. Cheating. So lots of people tend to compensate for their lack of skill in PvP games by getting aimbots and other crap. I have combined lots of hours in these games and I did not really come across anything that would resemble cheating, but there are players who might have had the unfortunate experience. It really depends on how much time you have decided to dedicate to each game individually, and also depending on at what stage did you play the game, as I heard that Chivalry II, especially during its launch, had some issues. Therefore, Chivalry has addition of easy anti-cheat in your folder, so you can run that, while Mordhau has currently nothing like this, but it's primarily because all the important data is stored on their own servers, so cheating can be a little bit more difficult. On top of it, they should have an active VAC system, because if you try to look up seriously both games on Google and on cheating, you will find lots of aimbots and other things. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, don't be a dick and cheat and ruin the game for other people. And because both titles are considered live service, both implement possibility of microtransactions, and I'm very pleased that neither goes into extremes where they're trying to push them onto you. It's not in your face like in World of Warships or other games where whenever some new type of bullshit loot box comes out, it's all over your screen. In both Chivalry II and Mordhau, you are able to buy the in-game currency, which allows you to purchase customizations or armor pieces in case you do not want to grind too many matches for them. But with all due respect, I have to say that when you are playing the game, you really don't give a rat's ass about how beautiful the enemy acts or how shiny the enemy armor is. All you care about when 4 guys are attacking you simultaneously is how the hell are you gonna survive this encounter. And therefore, I have to give a praise to both studios for not implementing predatory practices like EA, Wargaming, Blizzard, and other studios that are trying to bleed their player base dry. Because when I read articles about people spending over $15,000 on some Diablo mobile game to get some rare gem, I wanted to smack them over the head so much because it's such a crazy amount of money, and then they even deleted the game or stopped playing it because they've spent all this money and got this rare gem. It's really negative that these sort of practices are existing, but seriously, I gotta give a praise to both studios to taking the high moral ground here and not pushing this onto you. Also, you have to keep in mind that certain things are also locked behind a certain level. So even if you would unlock with the in-game currency some armor pieces, you might still not be able to equip them because you are lacking the necessary skill, and therefore the whole point of the microtransaction is therefore mute. And since we are already discussing spending money on the games, let us take a look at the comparison on Steam platform and see for what price you can get these. Chivalry II is a newer title and comes with the asking price of $35.99. Depending on where you live, this price may vary, and based on my research, I saw that certain currencies did not even change price, so the same value was given for both euros and UK pounds. Which really does not make sense because the two currencies are not the same, but what can I tell you? On top of it, there is the special edition for $44.98. You can also get the special edition content separately, and it costs you $8.99, which gives you some armor, some weapons, and some in-game money. During the Steam sale, I bought the game with the discount of 40%, so I only paid $21.59 in case you are wondering how much you can save. Mordhau is out for a longer period of time on Steam, and so the price is different. The base game comes with price tag of $24.99, but you can buy the supporter bundle for $27.53, and you can gain access to some additional stuff like that medieval guitar. And if you think about all those fun clips where people are playing Mick Gardon's Doom soundtrack or Beverly Hills co-op soundtrack or other music, that is the bundle for you. Mordhau has also access to additional content for the game like armor sets, but it feels more like the microtransaction and less like an actual DLC. But as I mentioned before, you really do not need these, as you will have plenty of options when it comes to loadout in Mordhau. What might interest you, however, is the crazy discount which you might experience during Steam sale, as last time there was over 70% discount, which meant that you were able to purchase the game for $6.24, and that is a great price for a game where you can spend a couple of hundreds of hours. Now, a special thing needs to be mentioned, and that is that both games received a large update. Chivalry II has received the Tenosian update, while Mordhau has received the Eastern Invasion, which gives you the option to experience what it might feel like going against the Saracen armies, making you live out your fantasies of the Crusaders in the Jerusalem-like setting. This makes the overall buying experience quite equal, but it also is great that you are given all these options and the microtransactions are not pushed onto you. And what I forgot to mention is that both the Tenosian update and Eastern Invasion are not chargeable, so they are a part of the base game and you will not have to shell out additional money for these. Minimal and optimal specs are actually quite good, because when I looked over the system requirements, both games are asking for not really total battle stations, and even older systems, and we are talking like 4th generation of Intel processors, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's more than 10 years old today. That's actually quite decent. This means that you can run the games even with total potato, and I know what I'm talking about because I have older system with Intel 4770K, but the experience of playing the games on these older systems would look like after visiting your ophthalmologist. Right after he drips those specialized eye drops in your eye to widen up your pupil. It would be blurry and not as crispy looking, but in case you are in process of currently upgrading your system, you at least know that you have a possibility to experience both games because the minimal requirements are not that dramatic. And discussing all these factors brings us finally to the verdict. And when I was playing both of these games and getting the footage, one key factor has been fulfilled for me. I had lots of fun, even when I struggled, and thanks to the footage which you were able to see, I kept getting killed over and over again. Keeping in mind that both studios are directly competing with each other, Torn Banner has the upper hand thanks to their seniority, and having released Chivalry Medieval Warfare all the way back in 2012, that gives them slight edge. Triternion has created only Mordhau so far, and I gotta say they have done one hell of a job, and keeping in mind that the original Medieval Warfare is still available on Steam, and the Triternion studio was actually the professional players who were looking for much more difficult experience and being much more challenging, I believe they were able to achieve this specifically. One thing to keep in mind in case you would really want to experience the older Chivalry is that Torn Banner has gone with some fantasy settings in that game, and you were able to come across maps where the Mason Order was building some sort of castle on top of a volcano with lava moats and other type of nonsense such as this. So keeping in mind that both games can provide plenty of entertainment, but depending on how good you are at learning basic in-game mechanics and how good your internet connection is, this might overall affect your overall experience with either one of the titles. Both games has still decent enough player base, so you will be still able to find a match and have lots of fun. But if I were to have to choose a winner after taking in consideration both the positive and the negative, I have to say that objectively, I would choose Chivalry II, as it feels much more easier to get into, and you will have throughout your experience much more fun rather than jumping into Mordhau, which is more suited towards those players who are looking to really challenge their personal skills and see how competitive they can be versus the other players. Mordhau is still a great experience, but I'm starting to feel like maybe I would suggest that first you pick up Chivalry II and you get the basic feeling for the game and see how it's working for you, and after you learn those 5 Ds of dodgeball, you get Mordhau, as it will be much more difficult and you will be much more severely punished after doing a single mistake. It's really difficult to choose the winner, and I always try to go for big positives and negatives, but when you are comparing oranges with oranges, the job becomes that much more difficult. As I am not only saying that either game is really bad, but I definitely did have a whole lot more pleasant experience, and I was able to get into the game far easier with Chivalry II than with Mordhau. And I believe that how much those initial hours will be easy to get into and entertain you, that can affect the overall amount of length of stay for you, the potential player. Because the last thing I want to see is you getting the game during Steam sale and then getting a refund after an hour and a half because you are unhappy and you think maybe, well, it's the other game that might have been better choice for you. But because both games are set in similar settings, they offer similar weapons, games, modes, and other options, with slight edge I really have to give the winning title to Chivalry II. But hey, if you disagree with me and you're still surprisingly watching this, let me know why I'm wrong. Let me know if you agree. Let me know what was your overall experience with Mordhau or Chivalry II, and I will be more than happy to read all about it. I would be also really happy and see what I can learn, and in case I have missed something important, please let me know, but keeping in mind that we have gone over so many factors and there are so many moving parts in these games, I don't think it's really possible to cover exactly everything, but all the major topics should have been touched upon. So let me know in the comments, and I would again be really appreciative. And hopefully the next comparison will come out a little bit earlier, as I do have quite a lot of games to compare. I will just need the time to get the footage and have some fun with the games as well, because at the end of the day, that is the purpose for video games. And if you really enjoy these hack and slash types of games, these two titles are really great contenders for your Steam library. Thank you all for watching, and see you all in the comments or at the next one.